Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At-Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay-at-home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight. Got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet. Cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey everybody, good morning. Good day. We're recording this in the morning. We don't usually
Good,
record
whatever
in the
time
morning.
it is where you are.
Top of the day to you, wherever you are. But hey, welcome back to the show. Oh man, Danny, I don't know about you, but Christmas is coming around real quick. My kids are already home for Christmas break.
Right? Which I was surprised. Mine don't go back until next week. I mean, they're in school all week, and they have next week off. But they only get a week for winter vacation for whatever reason.
A
I'm
week,
assuming we're expecting more snow this year, and they want to pad the bank, as it were.
Oh, the joys of living in the north. Yeah.
There's no snow. There's no snow. It didn't even snow last night. It was frozen rain, basically.
Yeah.
And when they're going, hey, it snowed. Oh no, it didn't. It just got messy. That's all. So looks like we'll have a brown Christmas, but I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
I don't need snow.
Very surprised. I actually heard them talking on the radio the other day about what the percentage of possibilities of a white Christmas are down here in Cincinnati. And I was like blown away by how little of a percentage it was. They were saying that it's 16% possibility of a white Christmas on any given year. I was like, oh, well, it makes sense, I guess.
On any year or just this year?
Like any year, it's 16
Wow.
a 16% chance every year that it's going to be a white Christmas, just because of, I guess, how, I don't know, kind of the way the weather works around here, which I can see that it's not like we get a ton of the cold air coming down from Canada, which seems to be what produces most of it. But it's kind of sad that it's only
That is. I honestly, I just kind of thought it was be like 80. Like, yeah, we always have snow. I'm what do I know about Cincinnati? Almost nothing. So I thought it'd be more than that.
Yeah, I mean, where I grew up, we get lake effect snow because I was close to Michigan, so that was not a big deal.
Yeah.
You almost expected there to be snow, and it was a very weird anomaly if there wasn't. Apparently, down here, it's like it's a huge extra present if you get snow on Christmas. So I feel like I feel like now that thinking about it, like we don't typically get a whole lot of heavy snow until like end of January, into February. So.
Okay.
Pretty wild.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's definitely when it's colder. What's really funny to me is that I'll talk with other people who live south of me in Wisconsin, and they'll get snow, and they'll get a lot of snow. And I haven't gotten any, because we're like middle of Wisconsin, and it's something again about the jet stream or what have you, and the air just drops down below us and covers them and stuff, and we don't get the precipitation or we don't get the cold weather. I don't know. But I'm like, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that a lot of people don't like me saying. They get very upset. The phrase I read yesterday, it's they yuck my yum.
Oh,
okay. I like these things. Those are gross. What? Come on. I like them. I'm enjoying it. And snow is one of those. I love it when it snows. I love seeing it fall. I love having it on the ground. I don't mind shoveling it. But again, I haven't been doing it for the last 50 years. So I have a certain enjoyment of it that I haven't reached that point. Maybe in 40 or 50 years, I'll be hating it too. But I love the snow.
I see it. You're out there shoveling it with a smile, and the locals are like, he's not from here originally.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked my neighbor, he's got a very cool snow shovel. It's a much wider one than the one I've got. I'm like, oh, and for light snow, I mean, he cleaned his driveway in 3 walks, down, back, and down again, and he was done. And I'm like, hey, and I walked over to him like, that's amazing. Where did you get that? And he looked at me like, I'm going to kill you with it. Because he's having to shovel snow and he hates it. And he's like, I got this one at Fleet Farm. It's a big one. It's about $70. And that's all he said. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to back slowly away and go back to my own driveway. You're right, sir. I was
You forgot to
wrong to
walk
come over
over.
here.
You forgot to walk over with a little like winter warmer of some
Right?
bourbon or
Yes.
something for him. Be like, hey neighbor,
Hey, neighbor.
put
First,
this.
let's toast.
Yeah, put this in your
Here's to
gullet.
warmer weather. And yeah, finish that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the old
Oh my
Saint
goodness.
Bernard,
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah, you got to come
jug of
over.
whiskey under his throat.
I brought you a present. Let me help you.
Mhm.
Oh golly. Yeah. Well, yeah, with it getting colder and everything, Christmas is, coming around here soon. And also too, just I don't know. For me, uh I really enjoy seeing stuff from other countries when it comes to the holidays too, because I feel like
Mhm.
everybody celebrates things a little bit differently, but I like the traditional style. And being
Mhm.
someone who has family origin from Germany, uh, the like the Christmas markets are amazing, and that's kind of the fun thing about being in Cincinnati is that you get some of those Christmas markets here because there is such a huge German influence,
Mhm.
um, which is cool. Uh, and I find that to be just an interesting thing because today we're going to have a guest on who's actually joining us from Germany.
Mhm.
And he's a stay-at-home dad over in Germany, which I mean, I get it. There are stay-at-home dads all over the place.
Yeah.
We don't get to talk to too many that are international. We only get to really interact with one
Mhm.
international.
Our favorite.
Yeah. so, um, so it's like it's gonna be fun to talk to Carlos Baker.
Mhm.
He's got a lot of um, different things to peel like an onion from him. Like he's experienced a lot and been through some things.
Yeah. Or a nice parfait.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So I love it. We have food references here on this.
Parfait
Um,
have layers.
but I think it's going to be interesting talking to him just because he moved over to Germany, and I'm curious to find out what that was like, how he went over
Mhm.
there. And I saw in his one-page bio that he had some things that he struggled with when he moved over there, and that's not uncommon because I feel like we've had some members from the organization that have also done something similar where they've traveled across the seas to their spouse, their partner had a job and they spent some time over there, and I feel
Mhm.
like we heard from them occasionally on Facebook pages and stuff talking about some of the difficulties they ran into.
Yeah.
So
Especially our military spouses.
yeah,
I mean, and that is a constant thing that, okay, we're going to move again in 2 years. Where are we going to go? We'll find out when we get there. And
right.
having children with you, and our guest has 4 kids,
Hmm.
and imagining, I mean, I went to Germany for just like a week or so, and it was great. It was amazing. And it was awful and it was horrible because I could not speak the language and I could not read the signs. Everyone there, fortunately, was very kind to have learned English as a child. So almost everybody could converse with me a little bit. And many people held a conversation just like you and I are now. So it wasn't that bad. But if you can imagine trying to get your kids in school and to navigate a school system
Yeah,
in another language,
that would be
you know,
rough.
that for me, that would, I that would take me a while to get used to. I would have to find some people at each school that I know personally, I've spoken to face, like, yes, I'm not an idiot, I just can't speak your language yet, I'm working on it, but my
This
kids need schooling. So,
Yeah, that's to me like this is where like the Google glasses that came out years ago, where like it would record and take pictures and different things like that. Like
mhm,
it needs to be able to like translate signs when
mhm,
you're in foreign countries. That would be super helpful. So get on that, Google.
that's right. Also references back to They Live.
I don't know what that
No,
is.
yeah, I didn't think it would. That's okay. It's a movie starring Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, and you should definitely watch it. It's one of the most fantastic sci-fi movies I think I've ever watched. It's of course not great.
What
It is
year is
not
this
great
from?
cinema. Wow, yeah. A while ago. Let's
Is
see.
this
When
an
did They
80s
Live
movie?
come out?
Was this an 80s
Yeah.
movie? 80s
Yep.
movie? Is it back when was it during his
88.
okay, so it was
88.
when he was in the WWE at the time wrestling.
Yes, and he was absolutely went into it. I don't know if you know Keith David, who is a very famous actor. You'd know his face, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But they got into this knockdown, drag out fight during the movie of just two big guys. One wanted one to do something, the other one didn't want to do it, and they just butted heads until they got into a fight. And it was all of the, it wasn't all of it. You see Rowdy Piper's skills,
Oh yeah.
And it's amazing that he comes in, and it's a great movie. It really is.
He'd have been in his like height of his career at that point. So that's pretty wild. Yep. I'll have to check that out.
It's by John Carpenter, so fairly
there
famous.
You go. Okay, well that right there. I mean, that's good. John Carpenter has got some great, sci-fi horror movies.
They Live is an awesome movie, but it's a lot of it is about wearing a pair of glasses that allows you to see reality. Okay, and that's why I brought that up. That's why I said I
love that tie-in. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That sounds interesting. So, all right, cool.
Not nerdy enough.
I think you just hit a really high mark on nerdiness, honestly, to pull that out this early in the morning. So. Well, hey, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have Carlos Baker with us, so we'll be right back.
Become a member of the National At-Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support, connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At-Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing. If you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At-Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today.
Hey everybody, we are back, and as we were talking before, we have Carlos Baker with us. This is the first time we're getting to really talk to him. We've been conversing back and forth through email for the past while, so it's really excited to have you on the show, Carlos. How are you doing, man?
What's going down, boys? I'm all right, man. Calling in from northern Germany, out here by Hanover and Hamburg. I'm a real German because I say it Hanover and Hamburg. I don't say it like you Americans.
I'm sure they really appreciate the extenuated.
Yeah, see the difference? You guys say Hamburg and I say Hamburg. It's very subtle.
It is. It is. I went to Germany just recently and I realized how poorly I speak. And it was amazing because for me, it was a horrible time, honestly, because I don't speak any German. I've heard it on TV perhaps, but it's all poorly pronounced. And we did go to a small rural town, and the people there speak very good English. The people that my wife's family, their English was amazing. And my German is basically 5 words of, I don't know how to speak German. Right.
Oh yeah.
And even when I said that, they're like, you're still not quite getting the accent, but we know what you're saying. I'm like, well, I appreciate you being kind.
Dude, I've been here 14 years, man. 14 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand 100%. Like, I'm in context, I'm all in. But my speaking, like, I have 4 kids, and the kids just cringe when I speak, because it's man, it's hard. I'm not too bright to begin with, but it's hard to learn a language when you're an adult. I think that's the reality,
Mm-hmm.
So you've been,
they were raised there
for 14 years, though.
Yeah, it's actually hard to believe. Yeah, my kids we came over here when my kids were 7, 6, 4, and we were just about to have a newborn. We moved here, and the kids didn't. My wife's German, and my kids didn't speak a word of English. And what's so great about kids, and I know we've all heard these stories, but we threw the kids into kindergarten and first grade or whatever it was back then, and within a month they were speaking German to each other in the house.
Yes.
Like that's
Yes.
kids, right? Like, and I'm
Right.
still like,
Right.
what? You know, what are you guys like? It was so fascinating, but
Mhm.
I
Did you
think
just
that's
cuss at me? What?
son of a no.
Right.
Yeah,
I know what you said. Yeah.
No, but it is what it is. It's also, I never went to work here, so to my defense, I've been here 14 years, been a stay-at-home father all 14 years, and I'm a wannabe, or I am a musician. And all my buddies, like you just said, all my buddies are kind of my age or younger, and they all speak English and are psyched to get a chance to practice. So
Yes.
aside from talking with my, in-laws, and when I'm forced to, it is what it is, man. It's already passed, and there's nothing I can do about it. I didn't do a good job kind of digging in to try and learn it, but I can fake it.
So
Right. And
you
you're-
have 4 kids, right? You
Yeah.
said?
Yeah.
And so you've been there for 14 years. They were all born
Aw.
over there? Is that
Brock
right?
No,
doing
so-
math. Look
Yeah.
at Brock doing math. It's delightful.
Oh, you know what happened,
7,
Brock? You
6,
forgot
4,
No,
and
Brock,
a newborn?
Brock forgot to carry the 1. Damn it.
I do that a lot.
I know. Just scribble it out. No,
Wait, so how old
so
are they
I met
now?
I my kids are all grown up. So I have
Okay, that's what I
they're in
thought.
the States. So I met my wife when I was 18, freshman year of college. So
Okay.
we've been together for 32 years, which is
Wow.
insane.
Congratulations,
And I-
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I adore her more now than I did 32 years ago, which is crazy.
Mhm.
Because that isn't that luck in the end? Like,
Mhm. Yes.
it's
a lot of
work, I
It's
guess,
work.
but
It's work,
but-
man.
but
It's
it's
not
also
luck.
luck. Like, how?
It's
What are
luck.
the chances that I'm going to still want to? I still make love to her happily.
Mhm.
No, that's too much information. But I
No,
I
you're
still
good, man.
adore
That's
her.
good. That's
I go
awesome.
right into it. I'm
You're,
like, oh,
you're fine.
Jesus.
You're fine. Anybody that
But,
comes on the Dad Lounge
yeah,
knows that if
32
I'm
years is amazing.
because that's what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, 32 years is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. But I met her 32 years ago. We dreamed she was a full ride. This is a great story. She was a full ride volleyball player. She came over from Germany when she was 20 as an au pair, and was playing in Connecticut at one of those bars that also has a beach volleyball court in it. That's kind of might be
Oh,
a
okay, yeah.
Connecticut thing.
Okay.
I'm not sure. And everyone had heard about her because she is a nasty athlete. She's 6 foot, and she was playing against the men's in the A division. And the coach of University of Hartford heard about her, went to go see her play, offered her a full ride on the spot. I was
Awesome.
going there as well, freshman year, and we fell in love. And we used to dream that we were going to have 4 kids, and they were all going to be volleyball players. And my 3 oldest kids, as we speak, are all on full ride volleyball scholarships in the States.
Awesome.
nice. Okay.
Good
What's
job.
up, baby? Woo!
That's right. Let's go.
No, it
Making
is
the dream come true.
we still just we still just shake our heads, and it is hard to believe that it kind of happened. And even weirder, I'm a normal sized dude. I'm 6 foot. My wife is 6 foot, which is a little bigger than taller than average. But
Mhm.
my son is 6'7". We don't have any that height in either one of our families, and he's this freak athlete. So he's actually in New York City, and yeah, we're so blessed, man.
That's awesome.
That is wild.
Yes,
So
that's
yeah,
great.
and German people, I mean, some of them are tall, but I would imagine he probably stands out in a crowd.
Yeah, what's funny is if you're from this world, so both my daughters and my son were in the Germany does a great job with athletes and with athletes and putting them into their kind of system and bring them into their boarding schools and all that stuff. So from a young age, all my kids, the German system took them over. They all went the girls moved to Münster, Germany when they were freshmen in high school, and my son moved to Frankfurt, Germany. So the German system has been great to them and to us as a family, and kind of helping them move along and getting to travel and all this kind of stuff. But we're in this world where everyone's tall. Like my
Okay.
daughters are 6 foot, 6'1". That's actually short in the world they live in,
Yeah.
which is very odd.
I would say,
Yeah.
yeah, you come
And
over
then-
here to
and-
America, they're tall.
Oh, they're
For-
well,
for
yeah. In
girls.
America, they're monsters, and the parents when we kind of go to those, we've been doing this for the last decade, kind of traveling on the weekends to volleyball tournaments, and all the parents are 6'5", 6'7". It's just they're just tall people. So yeah, that's our
Yeah.
world, man. Actually, my daughter spent my mom's from Bolivia, South America. So one of my daughters spent the semester there last year, and she was Bolivians are small people,
Yes,
man.
they are.
And needless to say, she's a very tall blonde American, and it was I only went for a week to visit her and my mom, but it was funny to see the attention she got. She
I bet.
was very uncomfortable with how the locals were so sweet. They'd come up with her to random would just come up and be like, "Can we take a picture with you?" She's like, I guess,
Right.
just because she's
Right.
tall and blonde, pretty much,
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's exotic in its way, but also just the fact of the height.
Yeah.
That in itself, like we don't see a lot of tall women. 6 foot is like surprising, much less any taller than that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It must
but
be like China. I haven't got a chance to do China, but I'd imagine China is similar, right? It's everyone's kind of
Mhm.
shorter when.
Now I haven't been so, but I've had friends that went, and they're shorter than me. I'm only 6 foot, barely 6 foot, but they're 5'10", what have you, and they are head and shoulders almost taller
That's
than. I mean,
funny.
you see them. They've taken it. This is me in the crowd, and someone took his picture, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
could
yeah.
see his head
It's
above
so funny.
everybody. Yeah, and he's like,
And
it's very
that's just the
humbling.
melting pot thing, right? That's the European
Mhm.
American melting pot, right? It's
Yeah.
just kind of, which
Well,
is
it reminds me
fascinating,
of
right?
like Arvis Brakeen, one of our good friends
Arvis.
who in the network. He's 7'4". He's got twin 13-year-olds, I believe, who are six
Mhm.
five,
Yeah,
and
that's
and
nuts, man.
I know he'll walk around. He lives out in Phoenix, Arizona, and he'll walk around, and people think he's a basketball player.
Yeah.
They
Mhm.
they all, I mean, he's this
Used to be.
tall, lanky guy, but yeah, they're all like, "Oh, do you play basketball for the
Yeah,
Suns?
where
Yeah.
do you play? Where do you play ball? Because
Where do
it's
you play ball?"
obviously
Yeah.
you play ball, man.
He's
Yeah,
so sick of hearing that. And I
you know
did
he is.
I
Yeah,
read I think I read a stat that one in 10 7-foot humans on Earth play professional basketball, which makes sense. Like
yeah,
the other eight are just angry that they're not athletes,
definitely. Wait, I want to back up real quick,
Try.
Carlos. So I'm looking at your one sheet on some things here, and you know, you mentioned in here that you're a songwriter, a musician, and an author, and the one that sticks out to me is you're an amputee survivor, and I see your picture here where it looks like I don't know if you cosplaying, I think is what that is.
Yeah.
It looks like you're at a Renaissance festival or
That's
something.
not that's not cosplay.
That is a cool picture.
Is that, are you
Yeah,
SCA? Where what you were fighting?
this was so random,
I
man.
love it. You got
So
like a
yeah,
sword leg.
yeah, the guy. So I yeah. So to go back. So when I was a kid, had a real kind of storybook childhood. We lived out in Rehoboth, Massachusetts, kind of near the Rhode Island border, and my grandfather. I come from a fourth generation family owned business, which is pretty cool. My
Yeah.
gramps, was kind of living that back then. That would have been what the 70s, was living that dream where he bought a little piece of property outside of the city he grew up in, which was he grew up in East Providence, Rhode Island, where he opened his first pet store and ultimately had a pet distribution facility out there. And so bought a piece of property, and my dad went to work for my grandfather and built like a $25,000 raised ranch on next to the gentleman's farm that my grandfather had. So I feel
Nice.
like that was the American dream back then,
It
right?
was absolutely that. Then it was.
And the beauty is, even about an hour and a half into Rhode Island, my grandfather had like a little lake house on this little teeny lake where we had a little boat where we water skied. So in retrospect, when I think back, we had a very wonderful childhood until I was
Mhm.
12. And when I was 12, I was a typical boy, like all boys, playing sports and all that stuff. Kept up complaining to my mom and dad that my left foot, I was having kind of pins and needles in my left foot more often than normal.
Mhm.
And we kept putting it off, and it seemed like something a boy maybe would experience. My knee was bothering me a little, and then ultimately my knee got swollen. My dad brought me to a walk-in kind of clinic in East Providence, Rhode Island. It's still there to this day. We walked in nonchalantly. My son's knee seems a little swollen. No problem. I'll take an X-ray. And the doctor on call walked in, and even at 12 and a half, I so vividly remember when he walked in, the energy was so heavy that even as a 12 and a half year old, I was like, oh, it must be something. Like it must not be simple. And he didn't say it outright. He said, yeah, there's something happening there. I'm going to send you over right now to a colleague at Rhode Island Hospital. I want you to go there right now. We think there might be something that we need to take a look at. And he knew right away that it was very far along, a tumor that was totally engulfed in my knee and kind of up my femur bone. And from there began this insane 2-year battle of the cancer. They ultimately found osteogenic sarcoma, which is a bone cancer found in usually teenagers. And from one day to the next, it was all in trying to figure out how to save my life for way too long, it seemed. Ultimately, they tried to save my leg from basically right from that would have been December of 87. So I was 12 and a half years old, and tried to save my leg for 2 years. I had chemotherapy for a year. They took tumors out of my left and right lung. All the things that kind of could have gone wrong went wrong. And for all intents and purposes, I wasn't supposed to survive. And for some odd reason, I've done a bunch of these podcasts, and it's always the same question: why did you survive? And ultimately, the answer is so strange because I was in the worst shape I could have been. So I would get 4 months of chemotherapy, and then they'd find tumors in my lung, and then I get the surgery, and then they do 4 more months of chemotherapy, and they'd find tumor in my other lung. So it was like, and people all around me were dying. These kids that at Dana-Farber, whether they had Ewing's or leukemia or all these different types of cancer, they were dying all around me. But what's strange is it never once dawned on me that I could die. It never crossed my mind. I never said to my parents, am I going to survive? It was just like, oh, more surgery, and then again, when my parents think about it, I was always kind of for lack of a better phrase, a free spirit. So it's kind of in my own world a little bit all my life. Definitely very confident, definitely kind of full of myself to some degree, even as a kid. And it was just like, more stuff. Okay, another surgery. All right, whatever. And oddly, there's a story that goes along with it that I'm always reticent to tell because it tends to be taken very religiously, and I'm not a religious guy. I'm an atheist. So, but I'll tell it because people get a kick out of it. Is they found 9 months into surgery, they found a grapefruit-sized tumor in my right lung, which basically the doctor said to my parents, do you want to take the lung out or one of the lobes, or take the entire lung out, or do you want to go make memories? Because your son is obviously, I was skin and bones at that point. And my parents were like, bring him in, take the lung out, and we're going to go find some different chemotherapy my mom's quite spiritual. She's from Bolivia. She heard about some guy coming into Seekonk, Rhode Island, Seekonk, Massachusetts, which is kind of near where we live. Very white, kind of upper class town. And there was some healer coming through town, totally random. So my mom and dad bring me there. This is the night before I go in for the surgery. We walk in, and in the front, there's a woman there playing guitar, an American woman playing guitar and singing Spanish music, which in itself was kind of odd. There's no Spanish people in Seekonk, Rhode Island,
right?
Seekonk, Massachusetts. So to make a long story short, I end up in the front of of the church, and there's people with their hands on my chest, kind of speaking in tongue. It was very emotional. I was 12 and a half and super sick on crutches, and I must say, whether it was the emotion of the moment, but I was crying, and I did feel warmth because there was a bunch of strangers' hands on me. And and to show you how kind of my personality, as we're walking out the door with my mom and dad, as a joke, I threw my crutches to either side, and I was like, I'm healed, just being a silly kid. And my dad's like, you can't do that. That's
Right.
blasphemy,
Right.
grab your, So, yeah. And went home,
I
thought nothing of it, went into surgery the next day and woke up to the news that there was no tumor in my lung. It was gone. And that happens. The doctors say it happens.
Mhm.
They don't know, they don't have answers for why it happens.
Right.
But
Right.
in the
Some
end,
people will say God. Some people will say,
right.
"No, this just happens. It's not."
Or we
Yeah,
we have the
all
ability,
sorts of
I,
reasons.
I tend to think that maybe we have this ability to tap in. And one time a doctor, when I was a friend of ours that's a doctor, and I was saying, yeah, who knows why that stuff happens, and his response was really funny. He's like, well, Carlos, if someone gives you a kidney transplant and puts a foreign object in your body without immune suppressants, within hours your body is attacking that very specific organ and will
Mhm.
kill it. So he's like,
Yep.
so it's not theory that we can heal ourselves. It's
Mhm.
it's fact. The
Fact.
question is, how can we heal ourselves? How can we figure it
Yes.
out? And not to say that who knows what happened. The bottom line is, they made the decision. The doctors made the decision to say, okay, we don't know what happens. We're done at this point. We're not going to do any more chemotherapy. We're going to wait and see. And that was it. I went
Wow.
at that point. My leg was in, I still had my leg, but it had a staph infection in it, and they had done a bunch of surgeries to try and save it. And ultimately, about a year later, we opted to amputate it to them just above the middle of my thigh. So I have about
Mhm.
19 centimeters of femur bone. And again, kind of atypical is if any 13 or 14-year-old, I was 14 at the time, would lose their leg. Normally they'd say, yeah, that was the worst day of my life. For me, I had just spent 2 years sick, and my leg was completely and utterly, it was barely a leg anymore. It was oozing. It was just a total mess. It didn't bend. It
Mhm.
it gave me pain. So when they amputated it, for me, it was like a win.
Yeah.
So, again, I look back, when I look back at my life and I try and make sense of it, and Lord knows I've had plenty of ups and downs, and I've dealt with I have demons. But when I look back at those memories, the way I remember them, and my parents will say, well, you're an idealist. You don't remember the hard times, but they were good times. Like, I remember it as being a positive. I was getting a lot of attention. The nurses were amazing. I was fascinated by the doctors, so the whole experience, and as fathers now,
Mhm.
I understand now what it did to my family. So I understand that for me, it wasn't seemingly that bad, but it destroyed my family. It killed my mom and dad. I don't know that my father ever recovered to some degree. I think his
Well.
heart was broken to the point where I don't know that he recovered. I think
Mhm.
I'm very close with them. But as a father of four children, when they have the sniffles, we're like, oh, my
Yep.
baby can't breathe tonight,
Right.
and my parents, I, they told me everyone assumed I wasn't going to make it, and that was just the reality of it. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's my cancer story.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you
That's
for sharing
amazing.
that.
Yeah,
Especially with adding at the end too about how your father or your parents probably saw it, because that is like it. I do not like feeling helpless. I really
yeah,
don't.
mm,
But every single time my kids are sick,
absolutely.
it doesn't matter what it is. They have poison ivy. Well,
Yep,
okay, I'm going to try to put some stuff on you. They're not
exactly.
going to be harmed. It's not going to be
Right.
injurious to them. They're going to get over it. Like you said, a cold for one night, you're okay. But that feeling of helplessness,
Yeah.
and I can just imagine how your parents must have
Yeah.
felt watching you and not really seeing a way out.
Yeah. And it took me,
Whereas,
and yeah,
go
and
ahead.
it took me years to kind of, um, to appreciate that, or to, I guess, just even before I had kids, it took me years to recognize what the experience, where it kind of fit into my community. So not
Mhm.
just my direct family, but my community. Not that I was a famous, kid, but in the community we lived in, I was that guy. And I think back before I got sick, there were a few kids that had cancer and passed away.
Mhm.
You know, I can remember them kind of coming in with no hair or whatever. And
Oh yeah.
and it took me years to even come to terms that, oh, I was that kid for everyone else in the community. You know what I'm saying? Like
Oh wow. Yeah.
it it's kind of
Yeah.
really and one example always pops into my head is I had two really close best buds, guys that were kind of with me the whole ride. And after we went to college, one of them was going to UMass to be a teacher, and so this was freshman year. We are 18, and he called me and he said, "Hey man, I just want you to know I wrote a book for one of my classes. I wrote a children's book about you." And I was like, "Oh, that's so cool, man. You know, whatever. Send it over." This is pre-internet, so you know, send me a physical copy, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he sent me a copy, and it kind of went through. He drew it and went through it, and one of the pages was like, you know, and we all thought he was going to die or something like that. And I literally called him. I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude?" Like that's how naive I was. I'm
Yeah.
18 years old, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Dude, do you not know that everyone just assumed you were going to die? Like what?" And I was like, "No, didn't know." So it,
Yeah.
you know,
Wow.
just very strange. And then the other similar story is when I don't know if I'm not sure what age I was, but I said to my grandmother, I was real close with my grandmother. I think I was learning about the Depression. So it must have been high school, the Great Depression. I was asking her just one on one in her house. I said, you know, what memories do you have of that? And you know, what was the worst thing that happened in your life? And she was so cute. She was like, "Well, I guess you." And I laughed because I thought she was joking. I was like, "Oh, that's funny." No, really. And she's like, "No, you getting sick was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me." And I'm like, "Oh, you know,
Oh
like those are like
yeah.
those are moments that as I don't think at the moment it was as heavy as it is now when I look back. Again,
Mhm.
when I think I was such a and continue to be, and to be honest with you, it's a kind of a flaw, is I was such not a serious person that that stuff took time for me to even make sense of. But I remembered them because it must have in my psyche, I must have recognized that those were heavy moments. But it
Mhm.
took me kind of years to kind of work through those things. Uh, I remember thinking, "Oh shit, you know, wow, my grandmother just told me that what I went through was the worst thing in her life. That's interesting." And it's strange, man.
Yeah, and the fact that she'd lived through the Great Depression, you said, because you were asking her about that time, is
Well,
that right?
I perhaps, but it
Or
was, yeah, you know, in general is I just couldn't believe that. And that was, I think that's what I'm saying is it took me years to recognize that I affected the whole community. You know,
Mhm.
another example is my brother was looking at a house, and the real estate agent, I was for some reason with him when the real estate agent was showing a house that he was looking at. And through conversation, she figured out, I think she asked me why I'm limping. And I said, "Oh, when I was a kid, I lost my leg." And she was like, "Well, are you?" And she figured out who I was, and she started crying. This is a
Oh,
stranger, you know?
oh.
So I would have been probably, again, I think I was maybe 16 or 17. And she's like, "Oh, I remember seeing you, you know, walk in." And I'm like, "Jesus, man, I'm I screwed everyone's life up, man."
It sounds like though that you had this perspective of, staying positive really and
Yeah.
not letting it take over your life or your perspective of what
or,
was
or
versus
more than that, just not
yeah.
Yeah.
recognizing that it was negative. You
And
know,
I
like you
use
said,
the
you
word
never came to your mind that you were
I
gonna
use
that
the
you might
word
die.
naive. I use the word naivety, and then when if I'm with my buddies, or I say it's almost like I was so dumb, and you know, not literally, but I was there was such an innocence about, I was a young 12 and a half year old. I wasn't kind of a, an inner city wise. I was a kid,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and I was just dumb. And my parents were like, "Oh, you got to get you got to get this, and you got to get chemotherapy and that." And I think, yeah, I think that it's a little bit of nature. And to be honest with you, the lack of seriousness, my lack of ability to take things uh, serious, ultimately caused me trouble in my life because, you know, as I got older and at some point we all have to grow up. That's just
Yeah.
reality. I have fought it all my life, but the reality is sooner or later you don't have a choice. So, I did have to get married sooner or later, or not have to, but sooner or later you settle down. And I went to work for the family and I got a mortgage and we started having kids. And at some point you got to kind of not man up, because that's it's almost like a sexist word, but
Mhm.
you do kind of have to be like, well, this is cool. This is the next logical step in life, right? I got to be a little more serious. I got
Gotta grow up.
Got to grow up. And I couldn't do it. The reality is, in retrospect, I couldn't do it. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the gear to kind of own those probably normal, very basic mechanisms that you have to deal with stress and to deal.
Mhm.
And the result was, in my early 30s, making a good living, working too many hours, loving my wife, but a lot of, we had 3 kids in 36 months, so a lot of pressure. And my brain, from one day to the next, I know where I was when it happened, because it's not something you forget. But me and my best friend we drove into Boston to see one of those, John McEnroe used to play in those events with like Anna Kournikova, and they would play,
Yes.
kind of like celebrity events. And something was bothering me. I was like I wasn't feeling right, and it had been coming on, like this sense of anxiety. In retrospect, it was anxiety, and I had a panic attack from 1 second to the next. I was standing there, and all of a sudden, boom, and my life
Mhm.
changed forever at that moment. I went from being a regular human being 1 second, and the next second, I spent the next 2 years of my life running and fearing to ever have another panic attack. So, I fell into a brutal depression. And it was as a result, really, of I just couldn't handle it, it was it's I feel like all of this is so obvious. So when I state it sounds obvious, but it took me a decade to make sense of. Is the result of that was, it took me 2 years to finally ask for help. 2 years of just hiding in my own little world. I started hating everyone. I started hating my mom, my brother, my dad. The only person I didn't hate for those 2 years was my wife and my kids. Everyone else, I thought they were out to get me, right? So it took me 2 years to finally ask for help, get on the right meds, kind of come back to some normalcy.
Yeah.
But then once I got to that some neutral, as a result of, for me, it was this drug called Effexor, which I'm on to this day. I then had to deal with this emotion called shame of,
Mhm.
oh, I just failed. As a man, I just failed. And that didn't take me 2 years to deal with. That took me about a decade.
Yeah.
And that to me was, depression sucked. I still fear panic attacks. I still am very aware at every second of my life that it could happen again. But to me, the post depression, what just happened? Why did it happen? Why am I a failure? Why can I not handle life like everyone else? That was the fight that I had. That, if a fight was going to take me out and I was going to go the other direction, it was during those times. So,
Mhm.
yeah, man. And the next logical question, I'm just doing your job. You guys can go.
Yeah. We just
Break.
let
Go
you go.
get a cup of coffee, man.
Right. We'll be right back.
The next logical question is, why did it happen? And was it as a result of not handling being sick as a kid appropriately and burying the negative feelings? And who knows, right?
I would say no to that one. Just from my own personal experience, I only have anecdotal evidence. I can't, I'm not a doctor, but no, you did exactly what you needed to do.
Yeah.
And you went through some very heavy things, but you went through them and you got through them well.
Yeah.
You won, if we have to use win or fail in this, that verbiage. You did what you needed to do to survive.
Agreed.
And
Yeah.
not only that, but I love it that you just never really considered that you could potentially pass away, that anything else could. Yeah. Okay. So I got another surgery. Okay. So I got another tumor. Okay. We'll just take care of this thing, and just took it step by step. And you named it as naive. And I really I feel like I resound with every word you're saying, because for me, I'm childlike. My mind is childlike. My outlook on life is childlike, not childish. Right. I'm still mature. I still have things, but I can see the joy. And no one's ever called me an idealist, but maybe they should have. But hearing it from you, I'm like, yeah, Carlos, I get that exactly. You did exactly what you needed to do. And I'm not a therapist, right? I have my own mental health issues and have for decades. But what I see from a lot of the men that I've talked to, because I run support groups and stuff like that, talk to a lot of people that you went through it, you got through it, and you survived, and this is how you did it, and that's exactly like it should have been. And then you had stuff to deal with, and it's not because you didn't do it right, for sure. And I really hope you don't think that, because I'm like, you aced it, buddy.
And Danny, I totally agree. It just seems like when I tell this story, people, they tend to they want to say, well, that's probably as a result of all the stuff, they want to kind of put it on that. And I tend to disagree as well. I say that, my childhood was not ideal, but in an odd way, kind of beautiful. It's very strange for me to say anything other than, did I have challenges? Was I pissed in high school that I couldn't play sports like dudes play? Yeah, of course. Definitely. I don't, I can't say that it was perfect, but it's very difficult for me to be like, oh my God, that was the worst. I don't see it that way. My parents do remind me, like, you had a lot of bad days. Like, there were days and I'm like, okay, but I got to be honest, I don't remember them either. So, and as far as the depression, it's in my family. Well, the funny thing about depression, and I do feel like I'm assuming we're all similar generation, right? I'm 50, so I mean, you guys are.
You're closer to him than me, but yeah.
54, 55 in a month, and AARP already knows it and has been hunting me down.
Oh God, nightmare!
Terrible. I got a email from some restaurant, Perkins, I think it's called. I don't know the restaurants here yet. I've only been here for a couple of years, and they sent me their, hey, we have a special 55 and over menu.
You get the senior,
and I went, get out.
I refuse.
Get out.
I'm not
right.
gonna
Right. Right. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, but we're about the same age as you.
Yeah.
We're close.
And I do feel like our generation, I hope, man, I hope we are the last generation that there's kind of so much you don't talk about depression.
Stigma.
I mean, our generation still has it. This new generation, it's like a rite of passage, it seems, which I said that a little too off the cuff. I shouldn't say it that way. It's different for this generation, right? But after I was more comfortable to start to talk about it, and I started kind of talking to my family, my dad's side of the family, it was so annoying. They're like, oh, we're all on. Oh, everyone on this side of the family is on, and we all went through it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What? They're like, yeah, everyone deals in their 30s. We all get panic attacks. I'm like, you mother. So I think it was coming for me no matter what. I think in my case, I'm not a therapist either. This just in, but I do feel like it was super chemical for me. And when the doctor did kind of once we did find that right, again, it was Effexor for me. I think it was chemical, man, and it's been 15 years and, I did the work, man. I did a lot of work to make sense of the emotions that come with it. But from a chemical standpoint, I don't fear too much, even though I say I do. I don't fear that I'm going to fall back into it. I guess it could happen, right? It would be bizarre if it did, but it could happen. But yeah, I mean, I don't equate the two, man. I guess in the end, depression for me is much like cancer. As tough as those years were, my perspective on how my brain works, on seeing that dark side of, seeing that other side of the way my mind doesn't work. It's given me, you know, tremendous perspective on how life works. And in my outlet, you guys alluded to it in the opening, is, you know, I'm a musician. So kind of all of my stuff that needs to come out, all of those dark thoughts and those, they come out in song or, you know, kind of lyrics.
Mhm.
So again, man, I do kind of sound like an idealist now, but depression for me, you know, it's one more, it's one more step. I certainly don't shy from it. I certainly don't, you know, pretend that it didn't happen. And, you know, my kids are aware of, I had, of course I shared it with my kids, because I'm like, hey man, as you guys get older, you know, if you start to feel this stuff,
Yes.
we got to talk about it, and it's all
Yeah.
good, man. It is what it is, you know?
And I love it too, that because I've noticed that with myself is you have the ability to look at it, unlike, as you mentioned, the previous generation, which would warn you, you know, they would admit these things happen and say, yeah, just in case these things come along, let's be prepared for it. Let's understand that this is potentially a chemical thing in our family line.
Yeah, man.
And
It's like anything, right? I mean, again, stating the obvious, it's like high blood pressure, man. I mean,
yes,
in our family, we're probably going to run into it. You know, one of the siblings on my dad's side, three of them are on the same antidepressant, and one of them drinks, which, you know, it's basically an antidepressant. It's your choice, dude. You want to drink?
guess.
Fine, you know, but
yeah.
We're about
Carlos,
10
that's awesome.
Yeah, man, definitely. I was gonna say we're about 10 minutes left to go for this show. Danny, you mentioned to me earlier about a book that that Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your book, and just it's an interesting framework, I guess, for the story. And I'm going to let you tell it because you're the author, but I really liked. I've only read the first couple of chapters.
Oh, thank you, man. That's so cool.
Well, yeah, I figured I had to know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah,
but I also was interested.
You and my mom both read the first couple chapters.
I'll read the whole thing. Don't worry, I will read it.
Thanks.
It's just I didn't have time between.
Thank you, man.
4 kids myself. So, but yeah, tell us about the book.
Are your kids all grown up? You got the 4 kids as well?
No, they're 17, 14, 10, and 9 though. So they're pretty. I'm in management now. I don't have to watch them every second.
You started a little later. Yeah. So my kids were my daughters. Yeah. So stay at home. So we moved. I'll back up a little. We moved to Germany. I got the depression. I caught the depression, and you know, got on the meds, and kind of started being honest with myself, my wife, everyone, and which everyone knew something was wrong. But my wife, from kind of one day to the next, she was like, "Do you want to move to Germany?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay." I mean, she's from here.
Cool.
And, you know, and I knew I needed to make a change. You know, my gut told me that there was so much there. I knew I had so much to deal with at that point, even though the sun had come out again and I was on some meds, and I knew I was up against it. So she said, "Do you want to move to Germany?" And I said, "Yes, let's go." And we packed up our house and our, like I said, then 7, 6, and 4-year-old. And with no plan and no money, we moved to the little village she grew up in. And we moved into, when we arrived, the container was en route, and we moved into the apartment where her mother and a stepfather, or whatever you'd call it, the new husband, and her 95-year-old grandmother were living in an apartment. And me and my wife and our 3 kids moved in there.
Wow.
And so that we were all kind of sleeping on couches and stressful, but amazing. Like, you know, the community, it's one of those, you know, I feel like when you come to, it's called Nummen. When you come into this little village, it feels like it's 100 years back in time. You know, most houses have multiple generations living in them. Everybody knows each other. My wife was the only person from her generation that left. You know, everyone else kind of stays. You know, that's just it's kind of beautiful, right? Yeah. And so they were super supportive of us. You know, I'm a good dude, even though I don't speak German, but I'm a you know, I think I'm a, from what Germans would probably imagine, I'm a typical American, where I'm small talky and
Yeah.
no, I don't speak German, but I'm going to communicate. I'm going to try and communicate with you anyway type person. And then I love kids. So my job quickly became taking care of the kids. My wife went back to work full time here as she's a psychologist, and so began our new life, man. Like,
Mhm.
we moved to Germany. It was, and I raised my kids kind of very hands-on. This was pre cell phone, so I was super engaged with my kids, and then my daughter started playing volleyball, and we were on the road all the time, every day, every weekend. So I
Mhm.
was really focused on my kids. Not to say more than other fathers, but maybe more than other fathers, right?
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I just know my own situation.
Well, I would imagine over in Germany that would be definitely an outside of the box
Oh
type
my God.
stereotype for fatherhood,
Oh my God.
especially back then.
People thought we were nuts. Yeah. It was the best though. I loved, I got to know every kid in the village, and it was the best. And
Mhm.
I'm a musician, so I would play guitar for the kids and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, when the kids were, let's say about 50, my daughters were, let's say 15 and 14, I'm a reader, and they became readers as well. So the Christmas of 2016, my wife and I got them a bunch of young adult books, and I was reading the back of the books on Christmas Day. And I was like, I've read a million books. I bet you I could write a book. Like, I'm going to write a book. And I read all their young adult books. And what I like about young adult books is it's not necessarily about fine prose, right?
Mhm.
It's actually the opposite of that. It's really about a
Yes.
very digestible story that young adults can read and connect with, right? So I was like, I can do that because I'm definitely not a writer. I don't know what fine prose is. I actually don't even know what that phrase means, but I definitely can come up with a story.
Mhm.
And I bought a little shitty computer, and for 18 months, every single day, every free minute, I wrote. And there was no plan. I didn't have kind of an outline, nothing. Just like I approach music, writing, songwriting. I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down today and let it kind of happen.
Mhm.
And what ultimately happened was the main character was a 16-year-old girl a volleyball player who, when she was 1 years old, her 16-year-old brother was facing the same cancer that I went through the same thing I did, but was terminal.
Mhm.
So he made the decision to write a novel. Write a few months of his life, and with instructions to give it to his then 1-year-old sister on her 16th birthday as a way for her to get to know him. So that was
Mhm.
the concept. That was the big concept that it started with,
Mhm.
which was really kind of, it wasn't planned. But when I then had to sit down and think of, I don't think I had ever, I don't, I mean, I know I had never dug in to memories of the sounds and the smells and the experiences that I went through those 2 years.
Mhm.
I just wasn't that type of dude. I hadn't gone back and I hadn't dwelled on it. So I found myself, aside from the other characters that came to life, this particular character became this amazing kind of like therapeutic journey where I was like, okay, what stuff happened? Like, what can I
Mhm.
remember? And and there's a handful of examples that I know for a fact I had never taken the time to dig in and remember them, and certainly not talk about them with anybody.
Mhm.
And one example I think it's a great example of it is after the amputation. So right after, when you wake up from, in my case, from an amputation, they put a cast on your stump, and
Mhm.
that's to keep the swelling it's keep the swelling down. So a real tight cast. And about 3 days after the surgery, I get taken into a room with my doctor, Dr. Mark Gebhardt, wonderful man. And he's like, all right, Carlos, we're gonna use one of these saw things to take off the cast and take a look at the wound. And I'm like, oh, okay, doc. He had been my doctor for the last 2 years. He had done all the surgeries. And so he cuts off the cast, takes it off, unwraps the gauze, and there's my, bloody, swollen nightmare of a stump.
Yeah.
I'm 14 and a half years old, and I'm
Yeah.
seeing my stump for the first time, which just this statement in itself is heavy, right?
Yes.
And
Very.
the doctor, I can just so vividly, he goes, well, and he's kind of like poking it, and he's like, looks pretty good, Carlos. And I'm like, I got to tell you, Doc, I'm not sure I agree with that. So there was even like a moment of levity in this such a heavy moment.
Mhm.
Like, but I know for a fact I hadn't thought of that, but to force oneself to reach into those in some ways dark but beautiful and and meaningful moments, and then bring it out and put it on paper, I feel like was super therapeutic for me. It was kind of just doing what therapy does when you go to therapy, is just bringing that stuff out and giving it back to the universe, or whatever, however you want to look at it, right?
Yeah.
And there were so many examples of that where when the book was finished, when it came to an end, and there's 5 or 6 stories that kind of interweave. When it came to an end, it was like, it was one of those moments where it's like, holy shit, I did something. Like, I don't know if, I don't know that I'm going to be the next John Grissom, but I started something, I finished it, and I got it in my
Yes.
hands. And as a guy that struggles with self-esteem, as a guy that struggles with, whatever success means, that was it was a huge step for me. Means the world to me to have the book in my hands, and it means the world to me when people read it. When again, whether it's good, it really doesn't matter. It's mine. They're my words. They're my So yeah, that's my book story.
Yeah. You did well. I'll tell you
I
this.
done it. I'm successful.
You are. And just with your kids, that's enough. But
Yeah.
with the book too, and your music, I will say I have not finished your book yet, but I've read enough books. I read a lot. I'm kind of a bibliophile. It's just one of those things my wife and I love to read together. And it's good.
Oh,
It really, and
thank
I
you.
recommend it. And I really think you should look at it. And as yourself, you're a success.
No, thank you. That's that sounds like my wife. She's always like, you raised 4 wonderful kids. What more success do you want? I'm like, yeah, money,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, maybe the money. Yeah.
It's always the money,
Does
man.
everybody know my name? No.
Yeah.
Gotta keep working.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's all good. I'm actually today, which in the end is all we can ask for, right, Brock and Danny, is today I am quite content. And what else can I possibly need?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then honestly, like, it's been a pleasure talking with you and getting to know you. And I think that, just the whole, your story, like your personal story, and then also too, like this book, like just a lot of different things to take in.
Yeah, man. Oh, thank you so much. It's been a blast, guys. I do feel like I can overtalk. You can just let me. I don't. Do you guys ever watch that? Did you ever listen to that Gilbert Gottfried podcast? Have you ever listened to that?
No.
I know he
I
can
didn't know
talk.
he had one.
Well, we lost Gilbert a few years ago, but they would often have these. They interviewed old Hollywood, and they'd have these 80, 90-year-old guys on. And they'd always say, "Oh, he was one of those guys where you just turn the mic on and off he goes," And
Yep.
sometimes I feel like I'm a little wordy, but what are you
You're
gonna
fine, man.
No, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's been great listening to you.
do? Thank you, gentlemen.
Talking to you was fun too, but listening was great. No.
And if you guys are ever out in Chicago, you got to come out, and I'm going to buy you a beer.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm all up for that. I only live.
Yeah,
5
we didn't
hours
get
from
to talk about
Chicago.
Hamilton. Man, I meant
Oh,
to.
yeah.
Well, we don't have time for that. We don't have time. Don't start, Carlos. We don't have time.
It's the best. Loved
Brock's
it.
family's waiting. My wife is probably waiting. We'll see.
Hey, gentlemen, I really appreciate it. I had a blast, and you guys are real pros. It was fun to be here with you.
Definitely.
Same.
And I'm going to make sure that we get in the show notes the links for your book and music, and just for people to be able to find you and things like that. Because honestly, like, the book itself is definitely something worth checking out. I was reading a little bit of just the synopsis, which is what you were telling us, and it's very intriguing. And I'm like, man, dude, like, just the synopsis alone, like, you start bringing tears to your eyes. Like, I can only imagine.
It's a lot there.
It's exciting.
Thanks, guys.
But no, it was a pleasure getting to talk with you. Honestly, like, I'm just going to put this out here because I feel like this is always the fun thing, but I would love to see you show up to Home Dad Con to get to hang out with some other stay-at-home dads.
I'm in, dude. What are you talking about? I'm in.
I mean, I know that you got older kids, but we love just when stay-at-home dads come into
Over from Germany.
the convention. Yeah, we've got a guy from the Netherlands that has been coming for the past few years, so it's not uncommon for international stay-at-home dads. So you have to definitely see.
I'll tell you what, I'll one up you. I'll come in and do a little gig. I'll do like a 45-minute show, man.
Hey,
Nice.
we're always looking for entertainment, so that's possible.
Can't go wrong. Look at me.
do that.
I come with my guitar.
I was
What
going to
else you want
say,
me to do.
you got a guitarist, right? You got a guitarist, but you play guitar too?
I'm a bass player, but
you're
I
bass.
can
Okay.
fake my way through guitar if I have
Yeah,
to.
it's a guitar. Psh, you got bass, you can do guitar.
It's all good.
Don't tell
Well, hey,
guitarist I said that.
Carlos, thanks so much for spending time with us. It really was an honor to get to talk with you, and hopefully we get to meet you in person at some point. But hope you all have a great holiday season. And we'll talk to you hopefully sooner than later. So
All the best, boys. I really do appreciate it.
definitely. And for everybody else, we'll talk to you all next week. So have a good one.
Good night, everybody.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.